that hour your clock strikes. Here, it's always Halloween, and I'm always your haunted host, Luce Tomlin Brenner. Welcome to Small Frights Friday. On these very special episodes, I like to share a curated selection of calls from the All Hallows Hotline and letters from the EEEEEKmail bag. But first, I'd like to thank each and every Patreon Ghoul Gang member. You creepy folks are responsible for producing each and every episode of It's Always Halloween. We certainly couldn't do it without Boo. So thank you, and welcome to our newest Patreon ghouls, Trey, Katie, and Michael. We are delighted to have you in our creepy coven. Dear listener, if you love It's Always Halloween and want to help us produce every episode, then you can visit patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween and choose from an assortment of tricks and treats to keep you in the Halloween spirit all year round. Please note that calendar Halloween is now upon us. So to celebrate, we will be doing an extra super duper amount of spooky things on our Patreon, including several screenings. I have put together a lovingly crafted list of films that I recommend. There's something to watch every single day, and while I will not be streaming live for you every day, I will be popping on for several of these. So please stay tuned to see which films you can jump on, stream with me, learn a little bit of interesting film criticism and historic background and how that film is connected to our celebration of Halloween. This list has been put together with suggestions from all of our lovely lanterns out there, some of my dearest films that I love to watch every month, and those recommended to me by my coworkers at my other professional gig as a lifelong video store clerk. This list is only the best and the brightest. It's not a list that you're going to be able to find on Freeform or Shudder or Netflix. This is hand-selected by a lifelong cinephile, your forever haunted host. And on this list, you will find films that cross the century, films dating all the way back to the 20s, films of all different languages, cultures, countries, films that are cozy and films that are gruesome. A little bit of something for everyone. That list will be posted on Instagram at It's Always Halloween Podcast, and it will be posted on our Patreon as well. It will be in our open section, so you can follow the Patreon, even if you don't subscribe to it, and get some posts and updates that are only available there to all who subscribe, whether or not you are a paying monthly patron or not. I can tell you one film we're watching for sure next month, and that is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, because our book club book this month is also all 3 Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. You know them. You're terrified of them. They impacted your childhood in a way from which you will never recover. So why not gather with a group of lanterns and discuss the ways in which these books shook you to your core, or perhaps you never read them, and this is the opportunity to read them in a group of like-minded weirdos and appreciate some very drippy, oozy, creepy, crawly art that truly you can't find anywhere else except for from the pen of Stephen Gamble. They tried to hide the images from us. They were much too haunting, but we got them back. So let's sit down and see them move together as we watch the adaptation and discuss this perfect Halloween trilogy. They're horrible and they're wonderful, and I look forward to talking about them with you this calendar Halloween season. And as we bid farewell to a lovely Stephen King September, don't forget to tune in to our last bonus episode. I read to you one of my favorite short stories, 1408. And if you're only familiar with the so-so movie adaptation, I beg you, tune in to the story. It took me much longer than usual to record, and not because my mouth is on fire from constant wisdom tooth pain, but because I was too scared while reading it. Lanterns, I was horrified, and I think you'll be able to hear some of that fear on this episode. And while most of our bonus episodes are 10 to 30 minutes long, 1408 is a whopping hour and 40 minutes. That's right, a bonus episode for you. Listen to it now at patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween. What's that? You want even more Halloween? Well, then you should order The Lantern's Way. What's The Lantern's Way? Why, it's our brand new full-color 60-plus page zine made up of stories, history, photograph, and recipes from all of your fellow lanterns across this big, beautiful globe. It is available now through our collaborator, Joe Carlo from Displaced Snail. You can go to displacedsnail.com to order. You can click the link in our show notes. You can click the links on our Instagram. It's Always Halloween Podcast on Instagram or Displaced Snail on Instagram. It is very easy to find this zine, so please order yourself a copy. If you want to hear a little bit more about this project, listen to last week's episode, The Lantern's Way with Joe Carlo. It's a fun discussion where we get into the benefits of a DIY lifestyle. I found it a very creatively inspiring episode, and I hope when you listen, it encourages you to get into some of your own projects. So get a piece of physical It's Always Halloween history to set on your coffee table this month and every month going forward because, hey, have you heard? It's always Halloween. Now let's take a call from our All Hallows Hotline. If you have a memory, a question, or a recommendation that you want to share with your fellow lanterns, then give us a call at 802-532-DEAD or write us an EEEEKmail at itsalwayshalloweenpodcast@gmail.com.
Hi, Lucy. This is Michelle calling from LA. First and foremost, I just wanted to say that I really love the podcast. I am a huge Halloween fan, and most people view me as crazy since I'm one of the first people in my friend group to start decorating for Halloween so early on. And, so I'm glad I found this little group of people that are just like me. So thank you so much for having this podcast. I'm not sure which episode this would fit into or what kind of topic, but I do have a chilling ghost story that just always gives me the goosebumps. It happened to my grandma in Mexico, and every year or so around Halloween, my mom always recounts it, and it just always gives me the chills. It's so creepy. So basically, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the legend of La Llorona, the weeping woman. Obviously it's a legend that originated in Mexico about this woman who you can hear at night, weeping over her dead children that she herself killed, I believe. So basically back then, I don't know why there are so many supernatural stories from, my grandparents and their, parents. It's just so weird. But basically my grandma used to live in a house that had, little to no neighbors around the area really. And it was one of those really old houses that still had wells, like a water well, and the bathroom was outside. So it was just very antique, I'd say. And she had this rectangular dining table that's pretty big, given that my mom has 9 brothers and 4 sisters, so lots of children. And one night, my grandma was having dinner with one of my mom's aunts and one of my mom's uncles. So they were just having coffee and chit-chatting. So her sister gets up and she says that she's going to go check up on her husband since he worked late nights and he was often drinking, had a drinking problem. But anyhow, so she gets up and walks out of the house, and by then my grandma is left with her brother at the table, and she takes a sip from her coffee. And as soon as she looks up, she looks at her brother's face, and he is just pale and just stricken with fear. I can't describe his face exactly because I wasn't there, but that's how my mom tells me the story, that he was just in a state of shock. And so my grandma looks to her left, I believe, at the end of the table, and sitting there is, and this is where it gets creepy, sitting there is a woman who my grandma thought was her sister, but it was a woman with long black hair just covering her entire face. You know, she's looking down and the hair is just covering her face. My grandma and her brother just stay looking at each other, and they can't move and they can't even speak out of fear. So the lady eventually gets up and she starts floating. That's the way my mom described it, and that's the way my grandma described it to my mother when telling her the story. This lady started floating, like just a ghastly figure in the house, and then just leaves the room. This story just gives me the creeps. Hope you enjoyed. I'm so sorry for making my last message really long, but yeah, that's the shortened version of it. And who knows? It could be La Llorona. It could be something else, but like I said, this story always gives me the chills. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Bye.
Ooh, Michelle, you have also just sent chills down my spine, and I'm sure the spines of many out there in Halloween land. This was not just a sighting out of the corner of one's eye or something odd that came to her in the night. This was multiple people seeing a very well-articulated figure. Oh, awful. Also, La Llorona is such a scary story, and I actually am putting together an episode on her because there are several different versions of the legend. Different versions come from Venezuela, Guatemala, Mexico, and of course the Southwest United States. But the general story is about a woman who marries a conquistador, a Spanish colonialist who moves to Mexico, and with him she has 2 children. One day, this woman sees her husband with another woman, and in a fit of blind rage, she drowns their children in a river, which she immediately regrets. Unable to save them and consumed by guilt, she drowns herself as well, but is unable to enter the afterlife, so she is forced to roam the earth until she finds her children. However, she really just finds other live children and drowns them as well, forced to relive the same horrible experience over and over and over. Common themes include the fact that she's wearing a white dress and it's wet and she moans at night and she's around some body of water and she attacks and takes other children with her. So yes, to have her leave this body of water where she is typically said to inhabit and come in the house, oh, very lucky that there weren't any children in the house. I'd be curious to know if any children in the neighborhood went missing shortly after that. I'm just wondering what her visit might have meant, if it was connected to anything that happened in the family or anywhere in the neighborhood after that? I'm so curious. Also, can you tell that I deal with my fright by trying to intellectualize it? What a terrifying story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, and I look forward to hearing more from you soon. And no apologies needed. We edited your story together beautifully, and I'm just so happy that you took the time to share it with us, and I'm happy that you're enjoying the podcast. Thanks so much, Michelle. And I hope you have a spooky calendar Halloween, but maybe not this spooky. Take it down a notch or two, will ya? Up next, we have an EEEEKmail that is a response to Lindsay, who wrote into us last week on the Lantern's Way episode. The subject line of this EEEEKmail is Garage Sale Finds. Hello, Luce. Ooh, I am so excited to be sending an EEEEKmail. Well, right away, right off the bat, excellent sound making within the written format. Great job. Okay, let's hop back in. I wanted to respond to the Lantern who wrote into last week's episode asking about garage sale Halloween finds. I have a serious love for Halloween and for stuffed animals, so I was extremely excited when I was at a flea market and found a little black bear wearing a sheet ghost costume holding a trick-or-treat bag. This little bear was a Beanie Baby from the 1990s, and finding it led me to Google Halloween Beanie Babies. 90s and the early 2000s, which were prime Beanie Baby time. And I had a few, but I never realized they had so many Halloween characters. I'm not usually one to collect things, but searching for these Beanie Babies has really been exciting. So far, I've found quite a few. A ghost, a Grim Reaper skeleton, a rat, a pumpkin, a brown bat, a werewolf, a spider, and a trick-or-treating ghost bear. There are a few more that I'm really coveting, specifically a vampire bear officially named Baron Von Pyre the Bear. Yes, I'm aware that I sound incredibly nerdy, but this is a safe space for nerding out, right? Technically, you can search any of these on eBay and just buy them, but what's the fun in that? When I find them in thrift stores or the like, they tend to be just a few dollars and provide a serious rush of dopamine. It's like winning the Halloween lottery or getting a full-sized bar. I also really like the non-Halloween Beanie Babies and thought, hey, I can make these Halloweeny too. I recently started hand sewing and altering all sorts of mythical creatures. I'm calling them Frankenbeanies, and I have them for sale on Etsy under that same name. Most of them have 2 heads. There's a unicorn, a dragon, bats, and more. I sew them while watching spooky movies, and it's been a great way to engage with the fall season. Attached to this email is a photo of my collection. Luce, which is your favorite? Thank you so much for making this podcast. I've been listening since 2020, and it brings me a lot of comfort. I love hearing everyone's memories and ideas on the Small Frights episodes, and the history episodes are my absolute favorite. Love from Maryland, Audrey. Audrey, this was such a lovely EEEEKmail, and you have got yourself quite a collection of Beanie Babies. I will be sharing this picture on our Instagram so everyone can weigh in on which one is their favorite. I had to look at it for quite some time to narrow it down, although I can say the spider's my least favorite. It's very scary, very realistic. All the other ones are super cutesy and, very over the top looking, and yet the spider really looks just like a spider. Don't love it. It's a lot for my senses. I think my favorite is tied between the trick-or-treat ghost bear, because I just think a costume that is a ghost sheet is just one of the cutest, most wholesome little outfits. And if an animal is wearing it, I die and become a ghost sheep because it's the cutest freaking thing I've ever seen. So I love the bear, and I really like the cutesy little Grim Reaper also. And I just love your creations. Very, very creative of you, especially the dragons with 2 heads. Very mythological. I could see them protecting a whole pot of gold, or perhaps some 12-foot Halloween skeletons that are, like a pot of gold in today's economy. And Audrey, you made such an astute point in your EEEEKmail that I related to very deeply, which is that you like to find thrifted items for your collection out in the world. My goodness, that is my MO too. I collect VHS tapes and, of course, Halloween decorations. And these days, you can pretty much find anything you want just by the right combination of search terms online. Now, the price is usually going to be exorbitant, which is what keeps me from doing a lot of shopping online. But also, I don't think it feels fun to just search things out like that. I love when you're unexpectedly surprised by something you had no idea you would see that day. Just poking around a Goodwill or a garage sale, or even when you're driving along in a new place and you see a thrift store you've never heard before, especially if it's like a St. Andrew's or a church yard sale or a thrift store. There's such interesting stuff at places like that, and it's usually really inexpensive. And maybe you're just having a regular old day, and then you just see one of these unexpected thrift stores you didn't know was there, and maybe there's a yard sale you weren't prepared for, and all of a sudden you could be confronted with items that are something you'd like to collect, but you didn't even know that it existed. Like a funny little Halloween mug from the 80s, or a Beanie Baby that perhaps you've never heard of before. I love to feel an item in my hands, and even sometimes just spending a couple of moments with a physical item that perks up my senses and gets my heart going. Just walking around with it, holding it. Sometimes I realize I don't need it. I don't have to spend money on it. I can just enjoy it for what it is in the moment and put it back on the shelf for someone else who does really need it. And when you're looking at things online, sometimes it's hard to discern if it's something that really should live with you in your home, or if it's something that's just perking up your dopamine inside. So I do enjoy that aspect of shopping in person, hunting in person. And I was happy to read that that's something you really cherish as well. It's also great to hear from another Marylander. I miss Maryland a lot this time of year, and I am going to take this opportunity to just plug my favorite orchard again, Laryland. So I hope you can go check it out. Most of Maryland is easy to get to within 2 hours at the max, unless you're in the very tail end of the eastern shore. You might not be able to do it, but let me know if you can go to Laryland Farms. I think you would get a big kick out of it. I will put Audrey's Etsy link in the show notes so you guys can check out her adorable creations, and you can find that picture of her collection of Halloween Beanie Babies on Instagram. Thanks so much for this lovely EEEEKmail, and I look forward to hearing what you're able to add to your collection next. Thanks for being a long-time listener, and I hope you're enjoying calendar Halloween. Now, if Beanie Babies aren't cute enough for you, then hang on to your butts, because we're about to get a very, very cute call from the All Hallows Hotline.
Hi, say Tubman brother. It's me, River. I love you. I'm waiting for Halloween.
Hi, Lucy. This is Rosa, aka the Pumpkin Queen, and I actually wanted to call in and share a little sweet memory. My River is actually going to turn 5 years old on September 30th, and on his first Halloween, he was still too little, but his second Halloween, I went all out and I got a wagon and I covered it and I did it Nightmare Before Christmas theme, and I put pumpkins all around the wagon, dressed them up as Jack Skellington. It was so amazing. I'll send pictures in. I was just wondering if other parents actually went out, all out, and did certain things with their kids. This year, River is actually picking his own costume, and he's into Minecraft, so he's going to be a Minecraft character. But we just wanted to call in and say we are excited for Halloween. It's almost here, a little over a month, and we hope you are doing well. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Hello, Rosa, and hello, River. I love you too. Thank you so much for leaving me such a sweet message. You made my night. And I love these pictures of you in your Nightmare Before Christmas costume. I will be sharing those on the Instagram so that everybody can peep them. Very clever work, Rosa. I just love seeing the DIY costumes that parents put together for their kids. Rosa is a very creative person. In general, we actually met at Awaken the Spirits last summer, and she has a fantastic Etsy, which I recommend, that's called Pumpkin Curiosities. And you can also find her Instagram, Pumpkin Curiosities, to see the jewelry and the collars and all kinds of neat Halloween decor for your house. So check her out at Pumpkin Curiosities. I love hearing the excitement in both of your voices for Halloween, and I hope that you have some fun activities planned, peppered throughout the month so that you can celebrate every moment of October and not just the one night of trick-or-treating, because that's fun, but also we can't put pressure on ourselves on just one night. We have to enjoy it in little bits and pieces. Every time we see a leaf change or crunch under our shoe, when we get that breeze in our hair, when we see a black cat trot by us, or when La Llorona sits down at our dinner table, we have to enjoy all of the little gifts that October brings us as we skipped through to the 31st. And I have to say, hearing the joy in your voices and that of all of our lanterns who have called in and wrote us EEEEKmails, that is a big part of what's helping me celebrate this year. So thank you, River, Rosa, Michelle, and Audrey, for sharing your joy with the entire community of lanterns gathered around the porch here. I encourage you listening to give us a call at 802-532-DEAD or write us that EEEEKmail at itsalwayshalloweenpodcast@gmail.com. This episode of It's Always Halloween was written, researched, and performed by me, Luce Tomlin-Brenner, with help from our lanterns, River, Rosa, Michelle, and Audrey. The sound design, editing, and theme music is by my wonderful co-producer, Pete Burns. Thanks, Pete. Every episode of It's Always Halloween is produced by our Patreon Ghoul Gang, and if you want to join the gang, you can go to patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween. You can also support the podcast by leaving us a one-time donation in the tip jar, buying merch from Redbubble, or leaving us a 5-star review with a cute little note telling us what you love about the podcast. That helps other like-minded ghouls find us. Today we have a lovely review from Skara. Skara says, "I'm obsessed. I just found this podcast and I cannot stop listening to it. The host discusses various cultural beliefs, values, and experiences in relation to the celebration, acknowledgement, and respect of the dead, the evolution of Halloween, and all things in between with a grace and humility that is unmatched. A wonderful way to keep Halloween alive all year round." Skara, a beautiful review. Thank you so much. I'm happy to hear that you're getting so much out of it. And it's a really flattering distillation of what we are trying to accomplish here at the podcast. You can subscribe to It's Always Halloween on every podcast platform and on the NPR One app, where you should subscribe and tell Ira Glass that you love us. Thank you so much for listening to yet another episode of It's Always Halloween. And come back next time, unless you get stuck on a dinner date with La Llorona.